Unfortunately, Dr. Dale is not able to be here this morning due to some work regarding transformation at the district office that he absolutely had to be at for today. But he was kind enough to record a video for us, and I'll play that for you now.
Good morning and welcome to the first meeting of the College Leadership Council. Thank you so much for agreeing to serve on this critically important team. Unfortunately, I could not be with you in person today as I am down at the district office as part of this transformation leadership team, and I felt it was important that I was down at that meeting. So allow me to provide you a few opening thoughts, and then I'll turn it over to the leadership team to guide you through this morning's activities. As you know, there are three primary purposes for the College Leadership Council. First of all, none of us can move the needle by ourselves individually as a unit or department, so the College Leadership Council serves to create that collaboration and communication so we can look at ways in which we can join forces to address our strategic priorities. Second of all, the College Leadership Council is tasked with aligning and monitoring the operational work of the college each year as we make progress towards our strategic priorities and objectives. And thirdly, the College Leadership Council's job is to make recommendations about closing the gap in terms of what we say we're doing and how that's impacting the following year's strategic planning. So it's about making recommendations moving forward for the following year. As you know, this year we are addressing four critically important strategic priorities. One, to increase the completion and transfer rates of our students. Two is to close educational attainment equity gaps. Three, to continue to expand and enhance our partnership with business and industry on our CTE programs. And fourth, to continue our good work in the area of sustainability. Each of those groups has an executive sponsor and a great group of stakeholders to engage throughout the process this year. A couple other quick thoughts, and I think it's important to note for this year. We are aligning all of our work with the College Leadership Council around the Chancellor's transformation work. So two of those large pillars, their work will be embedded in the College Leadership Council work. So the work around guided pathways will be embedded in the completion stakeholder group. The work around enhancing industry partnerships will be, again, tied directly to our similar group here at Paradise Valley Community College. Additionally, our work around PUMA pathways and our work with our Critical Thinking Academy will also be embedded in the stakeholder group for the area around completion. So we're not creating a separate superstructure. The work at the transformation level is very much aligned with our strategic plan, with our strategic priorities. So we are making it one and the same. We are not creating separate work groups around that area. So I'm so pleased that our work is so aligned with what the district wants us to do. Lastly, I just wanted to remind you why we're here. We're really here to ensure that through the power of learning that students are more successful. That our activities or programs or services are leading to greater persistence and completion and transfer to the universities. As I've shared many times, Paradise Valley Community College, we rank 1, 2, or 3 in the, I think, 8 out of the 11 metrics that the district measures student success on, and a number of those we're number 1. That's a remarkable feat. And as we just learned yesterday, again, for the third time in a row, Paradise Valley Community College has been identified as one of the top 150 schools through the Aspen Institute. Much of that can be attributed to the good work through this collaborative approach around the College Leadership Council. I look forward to being with you in person. Have a great meeting, engage, and let's move the needle this year. Thank you so much.
As Dr. Dale had indicated in his video, a lot of the work this year will be aligned around transformation projects. And if you're not quite familiar with those, we will actually have Dr. Maxwell will have a brief overview so we move down the agenda. But first we'll start here in a moment with looking at some data from statewide in terms of Arizona that kind of sets the precedent somewhat on why the work of the College Leadership Council is important, and we'll have that activity hosted by Dr. Denise DeJohn-Piclupo. Mr. Herman Gonzalez will then review our overarching strategic direction so we can see what kinds of items we'll be focusing on for this year. I'll then review with you folks some of the metric data that Dr. Dale was speaking of, and I have a handout for that as we guide our work. And then finally, we will try to wrap all of this onto what we're calling the Puma pathway model, which is basically our mechanism for what is it that we mean when we talk about fully supporting our student life cycle. And so we're trying to then use this model to help us to navigate all of the different elements around what you're seeing here in terms of guided pathway, the industry partnerships, supporting our learners, and then overarching enterprise performance with that. Finally then, we'll get a little bit more granular in terms of some group breakout where we can begin some discussions to be looking at the specific groups that you are actually embedded within and some of the tools that we might be able to use to help us guide our work and the college's work as we move forward for this planning year. So with that, Denise.
Okay, so if you can take the first couple pages of the infographics in general, I'm not going to go through each and every one of those, but it's something that we have seen not only on the news, but in the newspapers. It's a dismal fact that Arizona ranks near the bottom of all of the states in education achievements. Yes?
Can you put that slide up so that we can see it?
And this is the front page of it. I'm not going to go through all of it, like I said. So I just want you to, if you don't know that awareness, that's where it is. It's a fact, and we really should not be there. We need to change that. But the part that I'm really, go to the third page, really concerned about is the third page of it. A lot of you probably have kids that you sent to daycare, or maybe you have kids in daycare now. The reason why you sent them to daycare was to create exposure to other peers of their own age, to create an awareness of development for socialization, to actually develop skill sets in following rules and instructions. So that early exposure was there. What we need to do is take those same concepts of that, taking kids into daycare, early reading exposure, to also exposure to higher ed. Education needs to become a higher priority in Arizona, and community college needs to connect with the pipeline of students at both ends. We've been doing a good job of trying to connect to articulation to the universities and building university partnerships, but I don't think we've been as good as connecting with our secondary schools and the middle school region. It keeps going down and down and down to a further, earlier time period in a student's educational path that we need to connect with them. Because we need to create an exposure to higher education so that becomes a norm in the state of Arizona. It becomes a priority. They become aware of what higher education is and what that can do for careers and changing and making those positive social changes when they get out of high school, because we do not have that many students continuing on into higher education once they graduate. And if you look at the data that's on here, if we continue doing what we're doing now and do nothing about it, we're not going to be any better off when those kids reach college age than we are now. And I think that's really an eye-opener, because I think sometimes we think that the things that we're doing now is we're trying to change the here and now, the future state, and we don't really take a far enough look out to the future to see how far does it really impact the student population. So if you have kids or grandkids or whatever that are 2, 3 years old, what we're going to be doing now and the changes we will be making in closing those gaps are going to greatly impact their lives, and then in turn greatly impact the state of Arizona and where it stands and where its future is in sustainability. So that's my thought on all of this, is that I wanted you to be aware of the fact that you need to be not only looking at the future, but really looking at predictive analysis and forecasting what is on the horizon so that Maricopa Community College District and PV can stay ahead of it and not be just reactive to what we see in the data, but being proactive to what's in there. So you'll be able to digest some of this data more in your individual groups and how it applies to the area that you're working on, but that's just a general overall view for it in case you haven't seen these components.
I'd like to bring up Mr. Herman Gonzalez to talk a little bit about our district strategic commitments and directions. Oh, well, I thought you said you loved to talk, so let's pencil you in.
Does everyone, I know some people came in late, are there enough of these copies to make you need one?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. Tell them who you are. Yeah, tell them who you are. We did an introduction, you missed it.
I'm a guy who came in late. Just got breakfast. Dr. Rubin.
Yeah. So, thank you for being here today, and I especially thank the students for being here. What we're trying to do, and the timing is perfect with everything that's happening in Maricopa. I've been around for a pretty long time. I don't think I've ever seen changes like we're experiencing right now. It's, everything seems to change every day. So the work of this committee is really critical. And I think what's important is if you look at what Denise was talking about and some of those challenges, that's high level. So what we're trying to do today is we're going to draw a picture for you, if you will. So those are kind of some of the 30,000 feet, some of the economic and social issues that are happening. What this is, so this is what Maricopa is trying to do to close that gap. Some of these will be familiar to you. So there are three main pillars. And so what's happening right now, so if you look at the first one, student access and success, that's the committee that Dr. Dale, that's why he's not here today. It's one of their first big meetings at the district office. That's what he's doing. He chairs that committee. Workforce development, that is by Dr. Gonzalez at Gateway. Obviously with all the occupational and training that they do over there, he's spearheading that one. And the Attain Recognition and Innovator, that's by Dr. Ernie Lara at Australia Mountain Community College. So those three folks are champions for these three pillars for the chancellor. And if you really paid attention to what Dr. Dell was saying, we really, as a college, didn't have to do too much to align what we're doing here at Pvcc to the district. We've been doing this all along. This isn't new for us. We've been doing this for years. So, we really don't have to change too much. What we have to do is do it better. With limited resources that we have as a college. So last year, for the first year, we saw we had an enrollment that was somewhat level. The result of that was that we have $223,000 was put into our base budget permanently. Now thank all of you here. That's all of us. All of you. It takes a team to do it. It truly does. No one can do this by themselves or individually or a single department. And I keep saying that all cylinders have to hit. And that's what this does. That provides that focus as a college so that we're truly trying to accomplish things that are important to our community. If you look at the first pillar there, so I want to bring it home for you so that you kind of understand what we're doing as a district and what we're already doing. I'm not going to read them to you, but in that first access and student success 60-40, you're a faculty person here or at Maricopa, you've heard that before. So we're trying to achieve 60% full-time residential faculty and 40% adjunct faculty. So I think we're pretty close. We're getting closer to that ratio. If you look at the budget, do we want to hire more faculty? So what type of faculty do we hire? Do we hire somebody that math faculty in English or reading? We know that is important. So that's trying to on the development side. We know that the students particularly struggle in math. So those are the questions that we're having right now. But what we've done as a college, it's been about a year now. It was myself, Veronica, and Jean Ann, and the president. We went to an executive session. Tanisha was there also. And one of the things that we did, we developed a plan that specifically follows this. And Tanisha, you want to talk real quick from student affairs, what positions that we got as a result of that?
Yes, so we had about $243,000 that we were proposing. There were some positions in academic affairs and two positions in student affairs were related to. One was a permanent position in academic advising, which we just hired, so a lot of the hiring come through. And then the second one, we originally proposed also as an advisor, but felt that we needed more support to have hired someone, Joshua Moss, who just started as well. And also he will have the responsibility of working with our first generation students and doing some follow-up and tracking with them as well. So I'm very excited to have both of those positions in student affairs, and hopefully it will continue to help us better support our students.
Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. So that's an example of when district is saying that we're going to put some money on the table permanently, and the college applied for it. A lot of people have been asking, well, where did you get all the money to hire all these people? I thought we didn't have budget. Well, that's what happened. So for those 4 or 5 positions that we hired, that's how we filled those positions. And this type of activity will continue. The president has to do a presentation, is it November 2nd or 3rd? Or November 20th, I mean, that's when the stuff is due. So for the first time in a really long time, again, I've been around about 15, 16 years ago, the president used to go before the chancellor and the governing board, and they would basically do the budget for the college. Well, they're doing it again. So November 20th, and that's why our timeline has shortened up budgetarily, because Paul has to go give that presentation to the board and to the chancellor. And what he's going to be talking about are these things right here and what we're already doing. We're not changing our plan. We're doing the same things. And I know that, so Denise, if you'll talk a little bit about what you were putting in terms of workforce and the allied healthcare, please.
For the additional 19.
Yes, ma'am.
The areas that we were doing there is one to do the equipment needs that were for the occupational areas, but it was also to address expanding facilities for the nursing program, because currently right now there are 2,000 students in the district waiting list. We haven't been there for a long time, so we're at capacity, and that program itself needs additional faculty to maintain the student-faculty ratio, and larger facilities we want to expand. So those are the students just waiting to be picked and put into a program. The other area where we're expanding was the nutrition, developing a dietary kitchen for them, expanding that component for the dietary tech program, and then also helping still promote the onset of a new degree and certificate programs for integrated public health, and the support of that particular one. We had an additional Prop 301 grant for $240,000, which has supported 2 OYO faculties in that program, so that they can get that curriculum through the curriculum process and get it approved by the district as well as HLC and the Department of Education, and get it on ground so that possibly we'll be able to start it fall of 2018. I will tell you that industry is looking at this. They've been providing us feedback. They're waiting for us to get it approved, because we already have about 100 individuals from agencies who they want us to train their community health workers. So there's 100 people out there working. Again, it's looking proactively at what is needed in the workforce and being able to develop those areas.
Thank you for that, Denise. Yeah, it's really critical to understand what's happening around us. So what happened, I thought it was more like 2,500 nursing students on the waiting list. It has been a long time since we've seen that. But one of the main reasons that happened in Grand Canyon, something was going on with the accreditation. Those students jumped ship, so they're trying to get to ASU or anywhere else, and that was the main reason why those numbers jumped like that. So being aware of what's happening is really important. But more importantly is that as a system, are we ready to take those students? Do we have enough faculty? Do we have the facilities? Do we have the labs? Do we have the technicians to be able to maintain those labs? And so we look, that's what Denise was doing, and she's done a really good job, and actually she kind of predicted that would happen. And here we sit. So we're asking ourselves as a college, do we have the capacity to add additional nursing faculty to get some of those students? We don't have to do anything except get the faculty to teach the class. And I guarantee you that our sister colleges are having the same conversations as well. And most of them are at capacity already, because there's ratios that go with nursing. They can't put 30, 40 students in a class. I can't remember the ratios, but they're a lot lower. So that is the workforce and economic development, and those are the type of conversations that we'll be having in the district office. The third pillar here Ours, what we've done here at this college is sustainability. We're gonna have to really refine this a little bit. If you go down and you read some of the things that are going on in there, it's really not anything that we're doing too much of. If you look at the first one there, it's like a seamless student experience, that's SSE and SSI. We've been trying to do that for about 4 years now as a system. And I know that the chancellor is concerned about students not being able to register as quickly as they should. So that's a main priority for her, and I'm glad that she's going to put some time and effort into that. And that we have a person like Ernie that's going to be that champion, because hopefully, as you know, sooner rather than later, we can fix that. That was about all I had for this. Are there any questions that anyone has on any of this? All right, so we're going to head over to Dr. Maxwell. He'll do the introduction, and we're going to take it into the college level, so exactly what we're doing here at Pvcc. Thank you.
So how we've organized the Leadership Council for this year in terms of the agenda, Dr. Dale in his budget and planning framework that was sent out a couple weeks ago had gone through, and I don't know if you've had a chance to review our full strategic plan, but we'll get that also in here, but it's also linked on our website. But we went through to look to see where was alignment between the work that the district's trying to do, the transformation teams are trying to work on, in an effort to ultimately achieve the best success that we can for all of our students. So as a result, Dr. Dale had selected 4 areas of focus for CLC to work on for this year. In the areas of 1.1 in terms of ensuring quality and access, which is all about our student success, completion, transfer, graduation rates, enrollment, looking at our degree and pathway options, types of programs that we're offering, and ultimately to strengthen, again, the support for our students. More closely then, as we're disaggregating some of that information, it's really important that we begin to look at processes and structures that the institution has set up to help reduce gaps of equity within our students. And in terms of why do certain populations graduate at lower rates than others, or why do certain populations excel at certain rates over others. It's not the student's fault, it must be something with the institution. So closing education attainment gaps is one that weighs heavily on Dr. Dale's heart, and he'll actually be taking the lead from that as we move forward, but unfortunately, like he said, he couldn't be here today. 2.3, this is what Herman was referencing with Denise in terms of aligning our occupational programs and courses. So this aligns directly with the workforce information for strategic commitment number 2 from the district. And then finally, how can we leverage our technology facility services all to bring, again, innovation to. Some of this happens at the system level, but there are things that are happening here. And so, for example, one system innovation that's currently being rolled out is finally a system level dashboard data visualization view that all 10 colleges will be able to go to get information about student performance, profile data, etc. on our students as a system. And so that's something that we've been working on very hard for the last year for that, and it's coming closer to fruition with that. But again, at the college level, there are a lot of things here to be focused on. So we line on that for that. So again, 1.1 from Tanisha. Dr. Dale will be doing the equity gaps, Denise for workforce, and then finally Herman, your executive sponsor for college innovation with that. Okay, so we talked a lot about these are the objectives that we want to do. Here are some of the metrics and goals that was on the strategic commitment document that you can review more closely. But what about at PV? And so, and this document is in here, and I have it as well. I can pass it out to you. But our primary high-level metrics that we'll be looking at for this year involved obviously with access, delivery of that access in terms of how students, the modality in which students consume courses, programs. Our persistence rates from fall to fall, next term rates, overall success and withdrawal rates, graduation rates, and then a special focus on the equity of those graduation rates. There may be one or two other particular items that go in. Again, we're aligning also to the district's high-level metrics, which I would share with you, but I don't think that they've been fully vetted yet, but they're very similar to what you're looking at here. So this is for Paradise Valley. So this helps us to begin to look at the need in terms of some of the areas that to focus. In particular, for example, in terms of the performance for equity. And essentially, what that particular metric comes from that Dr. Dale is interested in is because this is a metric that came to us from the Aspen Award. And if we look at the gap of all students earning a credential versus minority students earning a credential, you can see that's almost double with that in terms of why. So that would be some questions that in the equity group that we want to have some conversation around is why is that? And we don't want to talk about race in this. We need to really focus on what is it about our structures? What is it about our I guess if you will, predictive type, behavioral type information that would help us answer some of those questions. Do we have the full infrastructure and ability to do that yet? I don't know. We're going to explore those questions in there. Our performance of graduation rates in terms of full-time, part-time. Now there's several different graduation rates that we have. This one is looking at basically first-time, full-time students, which is what gets reported to our NCCPB. We also have some revisions happening to our entering student cohort, and we see more, and that would include a combination of both full and part-time students over 3 and 6 years. And those rates are hovering somewhere around 28 to 30% on average. Dr. Ruby?
Yeah, you can send us out with more detail, and you have historical data, like 5-year, 10-year trends?
I do, but for this conversation,
No, I just want to know if you had that, so you can send it out.
Yes, yeah, we have those. And then our access metrics at the top.
John, there's also governing board outcomes that have been sort of flying around that some of this information is connected to.
Correct.
Is there a way for us also to have some of this, like Dr. Ruby said, historical data, but also that aspirational, where those
Yeah, the governing board metric data is currently being finalized. The monitoring report will be out next month, and so as soon as that data is available, then I will make it available to this group as well. We have so many different metrics for it. We have local college ones that are also aligned with, up at the system level. We have strategic directions, there's transformation metrics. So one of the things I'm trying to work with the district and others too is to figure out how to wrangle all these metrics together, possibly group them by some type of category, providing some kind of index score on a scale of 0 to 10 for groupings of these metrics, and then so it's easier to see. Because I mean, in general, I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60+-ish metrics over across multiple initiatives for that. So really trying to hone those in. I think as a system though, these ones that you're looking at here is for the first time that we actually have some common agreement, if you will, on some high-level metrics as a system to work through, and then that we can easily distill down to the 10 colleges. So we're making some headway in that. But absolutely, once the 30+ or 40+ governing board metric data is available, then those will be out.
I'm looking at like 1.1 performance success and withdrawal rates, sort of just as Dr. Ruby is saying, a comparison of where that sits, but also against our peer colleges, our sister colleges, and where that sits on our college versus the district, that split too, because some of this maybe we're doing great, or some of this maybe we're doing
Yeah, actually
terrible.
this one, I did put the 2 years in here, but we've gone up 2 points over the last time that we've looked at this particular metric for that, so like 70 or 3 points, things like 75 to 78, but it fluctuates, it ranges anywhere from 74 to 78.
Well, that's the other question, is there a statistical difference over the years in these fluctuations? And that's the question, is basically statistically the same place for continuous? Because frankly, as I'm listening to all this, everything that we're talking about here, we've been talking about since I started community colleges, and that's a long time.
Well, that's why why we're trying to move to systems and infrastructure to help us get the leading data indicator. Because everything that we're looking here is very, it's in the past. It's lagging data. So you have to go back and you look at groups from several years ago. And we hope that changes that we're making over time, which is why that happens, where the district really needs to take a better stance at providing information or looking at systems and integrating systems to get the kind of data that we need to see what is the true student behavior that leads to increasing the success rates. And those would be things like if we had it, the starfish system, for example, early alert. There's indicators in there that we could be looking at to see what that behavior is. Integration with our learning management systems. Had grading been put in early, are students getting feedback often and frequently, so we can look to see which students may be at risk for not performing well in the class because they're not turning their homework in on a timely fashion, or they're missing too many classes. How many times do they frequent the tutoring center, and what subjects do they frequent? So those would be all examples of the types of data that we're trying to wrestle with as a system in order to provide more informing information so we can see if the efforts that we're doing are going to be leading to positive outcomes for students. Please.
I think if you take counted the data just met from the years that we've been in the system, you've seen similar data here. If you look at the Arizona infographics, you see the current data, you see what they're predicting for the future for those 2 to 3-year-olds. Okay, if we do not have high impact initiatives that truly change what we're doing, you're going to continue to see this in your career in education. That's what they're saying. If you take what we have here, what you've experienced over the years you've been in education, and what you see from the Arizona infographics, it all aligns. Something has to happen, and it has to be high impact.
Exactly, which is why we invited all of you are here today to help guide that conversation and really format our high impact practices to ultimately get our students to be as successful as they can in whatever it is that they're pursuing with that. So, thank you, David, for your comments. With that then, I would like to bring up Dr. Tanisha Maxwell to help set some of the background in terms of the transformation work, and then we'll move into how can we apply that to what we're doing here? How do we make sense of what's happening as a system?
So good morning, everyone. So I've been charged with really talking to everyone about what the transformation initiative is and at least where we are right now with it. So I'm just going to be giving some brief overviews because as has been described with this major transformation that our system is going through, we are building the plane as we're flying it. And so I will talk about some of the overarching philosophies of what we're trying to do with transformation. I, along with Diane Chapman, we are the co-chairs for the Guided Pathways College Implementation Team. And that's part of the, that's going to be part of the initiative that we're working on in the completion stakeholder group for CLC. This is not a, this is just a visual that I happen to like. This is not something that has been deemed by the district. It's just a way to start to look at the student life cycle. Because I think it's important to have a core understanding of what a student life cycle is from beginning to end. So everything from recruitment all the way through to an alumni, the students have some sort of experience with us. And we all have an impact on that experience throughout that time frame. So this is just a visual to kind of see what some of those things are about. If you can't read all of those things, that's okay. Everything from application to enrollment to the learning process, our co-curricular activities, and also completion, obviously, and then on to alumni, being an alumni and being involved and engaged still with our campus. So that's kind of, again, one of the things that all of the transformation projects are tied to what does our student life cycle look like at the system level, okay? So we have 4 pillars for transformation, and this is some information that we are still just getting, so this is all that I'm going to show you here, but I'm going to just read you a little bit of the description for each one of those pillars. So the first one is the one that Dr. Dale is championing for student support. And essentially, that is an extension of the seamless student experience for those of you that have been in the district for a while. Some of the descriptions listed there: student services that effectively target and deliver students to the right college with the right program at the right time. So really the goal here is to enhance the student experience by developing and implementing system-wide tools to find, engage, and enroll students seamlessly. So that is the charge that Dr. Dale is championing. And again, this one is still kind of in the works. The next one is industry partnerships. And this really focuses on strategic partnerships and experiential learning and workforce development throughout our system. So some of the descriptions here: establish hands-on workplace experiences for students driven by our local businesses, and develop systemic and strategic partnerships with employers to foster growth in industry sectors that matter to Maricopa's economic development. So again, you can start to see also how these are tied to those system-wide strategic directions, those Chancellor's 3 pillars, right? Guided pathways. Industry partnerships is championed by Dr. Stephen Gonzalez at Gateway. He's the president that's championing that particular pillar. Guided pathways is championed by Dr. Ernie Laura out at Estrella Mountain Community College. And this essentially is looking at the roadmap to completion for our students and really having a good understanding for students of programs that are structured that they can get through, and they can really plan to know how much time it's going to take them to get through, and that the credential that they receive at the end is going to allow them to go into gainful employment or to transfer. And so those are the goals that we're really trying to work towards. And then also to provide wraparound services throughout the student life cycle as it relates to our students' experience. So some of those descriptions are programs that are fully mapped out and aligned with further education and career advancement while providing structured or guided exploration for undecided students. And then also proactive academic and career advising from start through completion and or transfer with assigned point of contact at each stage. So those milestones are very important. We are looking at a variety of work teams within that guided pathways pillar. And some of those include really reviewing how we see academic advisement and how is that impacting our students. Also e-tools and how we're looking at things like early alert for students. I'm sure who's
I'm so sorry.
And also, looking at other components such as those wraparound services for the student life cycle. And some of the other components are also looking at developmental ed, how do we map classes and programming. So a lot of those components are right now, that's where the trend is moving. So if we're looking at what is the priority right now of these, although all of them are starting to form, guided pathways is the one that's out the gate. And guided pathways impacts most of the other pillars. It also impacts enterprise performance, but enterprise performance, I think, are less integrated with the other 3. So a little bit about enterprise performance. And this is going to be focused on 3 things with our system. It's business practices, HR, and budget efficiencies. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at as it relates to the enterprise performance. Some descriptions there: consistent, effective, and collaborative business practices that bring MCCB forward into the competitive marketplace. A robust and comprehensive talent management system that ensures we retain and attract the best and brightest. And then also to refresh Maricopa's budgeting model. So that gives you a bit of an understanding. This will be something that we'll continue to have conversations about. It will permeate what it is that we're doing in CLC throughout. Beginning, you start to think, what is that student life cycle? And then moving into how that, what Denise was talking about, having some sort of major impact. This is our major impact. This is what the system is doing moving forward as a transformation that hopefully is going to have that major impact in moving the needle across the student life cycle and engaging our students in ways that we've maybe never done before, or either are enhancing their current experiences. So I want to also share with you a little bit about some of the aspects of the vision for transformation as a whole. So from a Maricopa standpoint, this is what the Chancellor is expecting us to do. And so she wants us to be best in class. This again tied to that strategic direction on innovations, correct? And then also to do the following 5 things: rank in the top 10 for all of our community colleges, have student success that's a stronger system of collaboration and efficiency, looking at workforce development programs that are going to help with employer relationships, as well as accelerate the type of preparation we give to our workers, our students, whether that's soft skills or other types of skills they need for industry success. And then also to create clear education pathways. This is going to help students complete faster, so they're not here for 6 years without completing a credential, but we're really getting them focused on what it is that they want to do and helping them get out into the workforce or to their next educational endeavor. And then establish district employment and management models based on best practices and market trends. We are currently in class and comp. I know that that kind of is a sore spot for us right now as we're working through some of the challenges with our HR model right now. But again, these are some of the things we're working through as a system to transform. Then we have some transformation performance indicators. As John indicated, there are several metrics across the board. These are some that tie overall to what it is the goal of transformation and what we want to be able to accomplish. So we want to be able to increase the students that are receiving either a degree or certificate by 50% by 2025. Most of these metrics are, the goal is by 2025. Increase overall 6-year graduation rate by 10% by 2025. Reduce average accumulated credits earned. Right now, we're trying to make sure that we don't have students with a whole bunch of excess credits to get their associate's degree. So if they have, if it's 60 credits or 65 credits, we don't want them to have 100 credits and not have a credential, right? Because that takes more time and money for our students. So we want to find ways to make that more efficient for them. Close student education attainment gaps for our underserved students, and John and Denise were both talking about that. Increase the median wage of occupational degree recipients by 10%, and within 3 years after graduation, and then also increase the enrollment of students by 10%.
I know you probably can't justify this, but how can we have any influence over the pay for degrees?
Well, I don't know if we can have influence over the pay and for degrees in and of themselves. What I think that we have influence over is who gets hired and who doesn't, based on the type of training that we're providing in our curriculum and how they're getting into the workforce. And then also being able to help them transition into universities, et cetera. And making sure that we're also offering degree programs that are right now in demand in the workforce. And if they're not, then obviously that's another thing that might be having an impact on how much money they need. Denise and
What
Jerry.
they're actually referring to there is the wage in which they start at when they're entering into the program, and then by going through the program, they've increased their wage after graduation. That's what they're talking about. It's not necessarily changing the wage within that occupation. We're talking about the individual's ability to move up at the
Yeah, the mobility piece.
David?
This is a question there first.
Jeremy?
Don't worry about it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, because whenever I see statistics, I always wonder what they represent. But increase the number of students who earn more than 50%, increase overall 6-year graduation from 30%. First of all, who establishes these percentages and why are these hallmarks and how did they arrive at this? Why not 60%? Why not 40%? Or is it realistic to expect anything which should be being something that may be realistic? I'm just curious as to the genesis, and I don't know if we have time to go into it, but it is a discussion. How did we come to this?
2 words, governing board.
All right, how did they come to it? They just pull it out of a hat?
Well, number one, David is tied to completion agenda, which was done from a college compact that was created several years ago. It started with the Obama administration.
Based on what?
Because the fact that there were so many students that had not earned a degree, that only 30% of students, or 34%,
John,
had
the
earned
question
a...
is this.
Right, so they picked aspirational goals, that they went colleges to reach to. So you look at the Complete Arizona 60, You look at the completion agenda, this was the actual wording that the governing board adopted as resolution, was to increase the number of students on the board by 50%, based on what administration policy had said at that time was the Obama administration for completion agenda. So why they selected that, that's what they went with.
Well, my point is, what would be held to unrealistic expectations in such a short time? We should maybe really have dialogue about.
I think we can hit 18,000 graduates by 2025. If we're not increasing the rate at which students are obtaining education, then we need to look at a new business.
No, I disagree.
Jeremy?
I'd say it's probably a safe bet for any future meetings that we actually have someone who, their specific job is to analyze how we got to the specific goals, because that would really help in the conversation. So,
Yes, well, John is our institutional effectiveness and research person, and also has an impact at the district level and system level. They're just, because our system is so large, with 10 community colleges and 2 skill centers, there's a great deal of collaboration that occurs in how those decisions get made. And so this is not just kind of something that happens when one person makes a decision about it, which is why there's kind of a conversation about how did we come to this, and it's a combination of a variety of standards that are set from our governing board, our chancellor, our college presidents, our staff and faculty. So it is it is very complex, absolutely. And that is a great point, and we'll continue to do that. Today, we just wanted to kind of share the information with you. It'll be something that, again, we will continue to have dialogue about. And we want to make sure that we are using this information to hopefully inform us, or even have us asking more questions and see if we can get answers to those questions as we continue to move forward. So that we have a really solid foundation of context for what it is that we're going to be working towards strategically this year. So I appreciate all your feedback. So a couple of things that also this is kind of a bunch of color coding right here. So at the top, you see in the top right-hand corner, you see the 4 pillars, and they're color-coded for student support guided pathways, industry partnerships, and enterprise performance. And each one of the categories that you see listed here that are underlined, these are projects that are going to be a focus of those 4 pillars. So they're color-coded because they'll fall in alignment with whatever that particular pillar is. So an example of that is under enrollment support, it says call center, and the call center's in yellow, and then that would be connected to the student support pillar and some of the initiatives or strategies that are focused on student support and the seamless student experience. Does that kind of make sense? This is a very general list. We're not going to go down on the list. There is a second page to this, and this is just again to provide you with some examples of how some of the projects that we're going to be working on system-wide are aligned with our pillars for transformation. Okay? So just the second page real quick. So this is a couple more. Again, you start to see some things like data analytics, accountability, budget finance, and again, they're color-coded to give you some idea of what, and then things like e-tool, you see it has a couple of different colors because it is connected to several of the strategic pillars for transformation. So I want to just get us started in talking about all of that information that's happening in our system externally, how we can bring it to our campus, how we're making meaning out of that information for us here at PV and our students. And again, when I started the conversation, I talked about the student life cycle. And how many of you are familiar with our Puma pathways, exceeds, post-ground, etc., right? So the Puma pathway is essentially Pvcc's version of that student life cycle that I was talking about. From beginning to end, what kinds of things are we doing to support students in their experience, fully engage them, help them to learn and critically think about what it is that they're learning, and then be able to take that information and align it with our mission to create some sort of positive social change, right? Holistic student development. And that's the responsibility of everyone in this room. So that's essentially what this pathway is talking about, and that's why I started with that student life cycle, so you can see what our version of that is at this point. So with each one of these stages, if you're not able to see those, the letters up there, I will read these to you just so you can hear it. So the first stage is prepare. Students will be prepared both academically and financially to, can you read this one? Hold on one moment. Wait for my cards. So the student will be prepared both academically and financially to navigate the Pvcc system before the first day of class in order to have a successful college experience, right? And you might think, oh, that's a front-end thing, I don't have anything to do with that. I just heard a story from a student just yesterday about this particular and what this meant for the student, because they saw PVC, they came onto campus, and right away there was a touchstone person. It wasn't necessarily their responsibility to engage them and orient them to the campus, but that's what they did. And because of that, that student is still here. So we all have an impact on those components. The next stage there says engage. So students will engage with faculty and staff to ensure academic success and become fully involved in college life. That is not just the responsibility of student life, right? We all have a responsibility to engage our students both in and out of the classroom. And that is everything from grounds to being in the classroom on faculty and to administration. We all have a responsibility to engage our students. That's what keeps them coming back. That helps them to persist and be retained. So then we want them to commit. Students will commit to a plan to reach their educational goals both in and outside of the classroom. That is not just the responsibility of academic advising. We can be having conversations with our students. Peer to peer, you can be having conversations, student to student, to talk about what your major is or what your goals are, how they're connected to something that you want to do in the future. As a faculty member, when I was a faculty member, I used to teach college success strategies, which is essentially that first class that brand new students take when they come to community college. And I would say probably about 85% of those students had never written down a goal and followed it from beginning to end, concrete. They can think about a goal, it's in their head, but they have never written it down, thought about the consequences, written those down, talked about the objectives of what behaviors they were going to engage in. We've all done that. In some shape or form, we've set some goals and accomplished them. Those are things that we are essentially experts in that we can talk to students about that maybe have not had that experience. Okay? Complete. Students will successfully complete their goals, giving them the opportunity for continued education and a focused career path. So again, what kinds of things are we doing to help students complete? Oftentimes, students will be either disengaged because of they have to take so many math classes before they can get to their college level math class, for instance, or maybe they've changed their major a couple of times, or maybe they had to stop out because they had to work, or maybe they're working, they're going to school part-time and it feels like they're never going to finish. What kinds of things are we doing to help motivate them to complete? And how do we help them see the value in completion, right? So there are things that, again, we have a responsibility to do. And then thrive. This gets to that, what happens after they're alumni? Do they come back and take classes? Do they give back and donate as alumni? Do they mentor other students? Do they create positive social change? Do we create partnerships with them? We just had an alumni event just this past weekend where one of our alumni works for the Diamondbacks, and we had a Pvcc night. And that was a really great event because we had almost, I think it was about 180 Pvcc faculty, staff, and families that went to a DVACS game. And some of that money is going to be then contributed to student scholarships. That's how that, when you think about Thrive, that's what those components are about. What kinds of things are we doing to engage? Whether it's going to the baseball game, whether it's telling someone else about the baseball game and then going, there's all these connections that we could be making to help our students thrive, even after they get a credential here, or even if they don't get a credential, even after they've taken a class. So that just gives you, again, a little bit of context for that bigger student life cycle, transformation, and then the Kuma pathway. So there are a couple other components that are going to be engaged and related to this. We've talked about guided pathways from a general sense. This gives you just a little more information. I just want to focus on the implementation piece of this, which is that there is, the 4 things are listed there. The goal is to clarify an educational path for our students, right? Then help them to get on that path. So the whole career exploration, what kind of education do I want to get? What am I majoring in? Why am I here? Those components of clarifying paths, right? Why do I belong here? Do I matter? Do I feel safe here? All of those things are a part of clarifying paths because they're about values too, right? How do they connect with our institution, our environment? Then you get to getting them on a path. That's going to be helpful because then that's the whole point of having the program mapping, etc., so that the students can clearly see how long it's going to take them to get from A to Z, right? Help them stay on the path. So how do we engage them? How do we provide opportunities for work experiences? How do we provide opportunities for them to engage in service learning in the community? What kinds of things are we doing to provide educational workshops for them on campus? Those are all part of that retaining our students to keep them on path, and then make sure that they're learning. So that making sure that their learning piece is also connected to our critical thinking academy. We're really trying to make a change, really trying to make a cultural change so that all of us are engaged in critical thinking, not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. So that's the component that you see here that is focused on our critical thinking academy that really started by the championing of our faculty and HLC, which is our accrediting body. This is our project for persistence and completion. So it's been going on for 2 years now. We're about the 2-year mark. We just started to incorporate student affairs into the critical thinking academy. So they just went through the training with the second cohort this year. I talked about it a little bit at convocation for those of you that were there. And the goal now is to start training not only our faculty, but our staff in helping them to understand that they're also educators. They're also critical thinkers, and how do they foster critical thinking in their students? So as students, is when you start to see, what my experience has been with my advisor, did they help me critically think about my educational plan? Those are the things that we're trying to foster in our academic advisors as well, but not only in academic advisors, but in our staff and our faculty, in and out of the classroom. So this is another component that will be embedded with the Kuma pathway. Yes.
When we're talking about pathways, what do we do with a student who's not interested in a degree, they're not interested in a certificate, they just want to take a couple maybe business classes to enhance their business? Have we failed them because they haven't gotten a degree or certificate? How do we measure that so we can see them as being a success and report them as a success and instead of being told, oh, they didn't finish a degree, they didn't finish a certificate, you failed them?
There is definitely a challenge with being able to calculate that data in terms of success, but it doesn't mean in terms of the student themselves that if they set a goal for themselves and we help them to stay on the path to whatever that
Well, how do we
goal is.
measure that so we can take credit for it?
Yeah, that is more of a challenge. That is the $100,000 question right there that we will continue to ask questions about, and I think through trial and error, try to find a best way to
One
be
of the
able to
ways,
support that.
David, that we're trying to work on this year, finding out that we have our assistant dean in admissions and records and Tanisha on board is one of the things that we're really vamping up, which I started last year, we just didn't finish it unfortunately, was a goals survey on students, especially those students at the end of a given semester or end of the year, in which we can ask them about were the reasons why you came here, what were those reasons, and then did you achieve those outcomes as a result of
Yeah,
attending?
that sounds like good, because my concern is this. A lot of students come here, particularly adults, they're not interested in a degree, they have one. They just want to pick up some skills. But if they're so narrowly limiting our success by degree completion, transfer, and this, well, that knocks out a hell of a lot of people in our success profile that should be counted. Because I'm telling you what, if I just came here to take a business class, a couple of county classes, I can run my business better. I got that, I'm doing my business better. So something like that's very important, but we need to insert that into the conversation as to what success is. I'm very concerned about limiting our definition of success to just
Well,
grade
there's-
completion
It's
transfer.
certainly part of the, it certainly helps to, with the story to tell that, but we do know that large percentage of our students do come with high aspirations to complete a degree of some sort.
And
Well,
they change your minds.
I appreciate what you're saying too, Jim, because the other component of that is also looking at some of the things that we're doing to engage our students on campus. So for instance, one of the things that I was just talking about with Grad on the Go, we just had our Grad on the Go event. We had more participation from students than we've had in the past. We're talking about ways to continue to expand that. To expand that and not just have it related to just student affairs, but to combine that as something that's integrated with faculty, with staff, with student life, and with student services, so that we are getting more of an understanding of how students are engaged in different ways. How are faculty engaging students in learning in those moments? And how are they encouraging students to come and participate in a student success fair? And how can we assess what they're learning, right? Because that gives us an opportunity to ask those types of questions and assess how our students are learning. Did they achieve the goals that they wanted to achieve? Was there something about that particular event even that gave them some information or insight into something that was going to help them complete their goals, whatever those goals are that they established? So yes, you definitely bring up a good point. I think that there are things that we're going to be doing to work on that as well and identify some of those things. And we are going to be depending on our experts in assessment, right? And our partnerships with faculty as it relates to some of that as well. Alyssa.
To answer to him, I feel the solution is much simpler than it all seems. It all comes down to the connection that the teacher makes with that student, and to get them from just taking a class, from just learning new skills, is that that person needs to pique their interest, and two, convince them that whatever subject they're doing, they should learn more of that.
Because honestly, some people do just come here for a single class, like he said. And I think the easiest way to determine that is when they go to their advisor, just have a short box that they check before they leave. Are they going for a degree, or are they just coming for a few classes? That's an easy way to report it.
Great idea. I'm sure that
Well,
we'll
you know,
be taking some of that information.
The young man brings up a great point, because then I'll tell you another success story you can tell off this. It's about telling stories. You have a student who came here for one class, they identified they came from a class or two classes, but then all of a sudden, they liked it so much they stayed here. That's another level of success we have. I used to work in a program at Mesa Community College that was meant for women who were teacher's aides but didn't have any professional education. It was a teacher's aide by a certification program. A lot of these women were very frightened. They didn't have gone to college. They just graduated from high school, got married, had kids. Well, they were working at the schools now. And it was amazing to watch the transformations. You could convince them to get into the classroom, to take one class on teacher pedagogy. They saw they could do it. Large numbers got certificates and even went on to get bachelor's degrees in education. Not all of them, but more than would have. That's a success story. So what I'm trying to get at here as we're discussing this and thinking about this is how do we redefine and define success our way, in realistic ways, and brag about it and make sure it's heard out there.
Make a good point. Thank you for sharing that story too. This actually is a great way to transition in what the activity is going to be about, because this is about you being able to also see what does this mean to me in my world of work, in my office or my classroom, right? What does this mean to me? So I want to go back to that Puma pathway, and I'm going to put some cards on the table. So the cards are all 5 of the different stages of the Puma pathway. What I want you to be able to do is to start to think, pair, share about this at your tables. And I want you to think about how you, in your role on this campus, how you impact each one of these stages.
No, we're at
in my everyday, I feel that what happened for me in the yard is what transformed to the life. So what you guys see is what hours that when other people are sleeping, is what you guys, is what I'm doing. Right? So thriving to make this whole thing work, being together, coming together to make one small thing blossom. Right? And I want to see more than my personal success. I want to contribute to Alicia's success, success, to Mike's success, Mike as a whole. And I think collectively we can grow together. And I think of Thrive, and I think about collective movement, strength in the numbers. So that's how I feel like I would contribute as a team.
A lot of that too is, remember how you're saying the hours in the dark? People don't talk about the hours in the dark anymore. Everybody thinks that there's no organization, so sharing that background is really
I guess on interviews, it's quite ironic that I got this with you because this is what I've been worrying about this entire time, is how do we make it so how do we make it so that the students continue with it? What's the connections that I was saying? I was kind of whispering around it, which I'm sure you guys heard, was I feel I work better is when I make a connection with someone, because then I'm going to want to work harder so that I can prove myself to that professor, teacher, advisor, whomever it is that I'm making that connection with, because I'm more likely to go to an event of, say, Jeremy, Jad, or my friend, or someone that I respect than some stranger that I do not know. There's a difference between respect of authority and respect of the person, which comes down to the teacher itself, because I can respect their authority, but I may not respect the teacher that is, and I'm not going to work 10 times as hard to prove myself to that teacher if I'm not making a connection with them. It all comes down, I think it's a lot simpler than it is. Yes, it comes down to their education level and their competency with that, but I think it also comes down to their ability to make a connection and actually speak to the children. I work with students, I work with kids too, so it all comes back. It works with kids, students, adults. You need to be able to make that connection and speak with them on a personal level, even if it doesn't seem like you know the kid or person. You need to make sure that they feel heard and that you're looking for their best interest. So I guess that I feel is the best way to making sure that students complete their goals.
So, personally, I think that both of your guys' part, it heavily involves student involvement with the school. So the more friends you have, the more likely you're going to stay at the school, the more chance you're going to ask for help and actually succeed. So I think that's kind of the center for actually both of yours. You had separate points and you had separate points added on, but that's what I saw.
Yeah.
So for preparing, a student will be prepared for both academically and financially to navigate the Pvcc system before the first day of class in order to have a successful college experience. So it's not student body government's role right now to do that, but I think we could take that on by actually going to high schools and talking to the kids. Because when I had that happen, I didn't actually get a real understanding of what it is having a college day, what it was actually applying for college grants. I was just told that I'm supposed to do it and maybe a website or two to check out. So I think actually having us go to schools and talk to them is the best way to do that. We can tell them what actual school days are like, what it's actually like applying for grants and how to do it. People that they can actually call if they need help with it, not just a website to check out. And I think that's a responsibility that
They're full-time, employees
Views of that,
In terms of prepare for I use my experience about 20 some years ago when I started community college. I live only about 2 miles away from PV, but I don't know PV.
So I had to travel all the way to Clinton Community Colleges and take this class over there. So by what I'm saying, 8 years ago, I developed the Community Learning Day, and we've been working at PV for 5 years. That we working with community college, American community colleges. We open Community Learning Day where we try to educate parents and community people and students, high school students, try to see how they can be accept to community colleges, get educational financial plan, and how to achieve their scholarship applications, how to be able to separate school. Those kind of things we try to repair, but repair here, I think we not only repair people in community colleges, but repair level where they are community people, they are the students in high school, so they can be able to know available education there for them to tend to be successful. And we have a lot of workshops like, if you do not attend community college, what you will lose for your whole life of your living here. What do you do? How much do you lose? What you do not get community college education? If you do not move forward for your bachelor's degree, what do you do in your life? So we give on a career workshop to give the students to see your career path, your life, just go that way to be able to be successful. And those kind of things we can prepare from there so they can be able to go and obtain education.
Departments within the institution, faculty and staff, and students. We have students who don't even know what any of that means, they just really want to talk to us. How do we get them to the point where they are students? So out of the student affairs side of the care, the way it was defined by Veronica was recruitment to the first day of school. So everything from the events that we have to tell them about FAFSA and coming to school, to doing their placement testing, to orientation, and then paying and getting
10 more minutes, and then we're gonna
and then everything else engaged is like where student life leadership would come in, career services, disability services, like services that you offer in terms of also. The commit, one of the things that I do in career services is that when we do resume workshops or we do presentations and we're actually working with students, they write down what their college major, their degree plan is. A lot of times they just have their high school. So we say, okay, what are you doing? You're a Pvcc student. Let's put that on there. What degree program are you in? A lot of times they say, I don't know. And so we'll go and we'll look at the records and say, oh, look, if you've been taking business classes. Well, I guess I have. I didn't know. Oh, that's an associated business degree. You have 45 credits towards that. Maybe you should be talking to an advisor about how you can complete this program. Because that's one of the ways that we engage in the program. They want to go into.
Yeah, it can be a combination. Like I said, you can kind of like what we do with the college programs. So maybe not the whole thing because it's just for seniors, but start on it.
But that's
So yeah, that would be another one that we can also try to do. But for adults, definitely something that is more related so that they can take two classes per semester, feel like they're progressing, yet they don't have to concentrate on two at a time. So
one of the charges that I have is looking at the 8-week plan, like how to do the fast track programs. Yeah, and which would probably be a blend with online too. So kind of looking at.
Well, it's so funny. In the college that I work at out east, they call J term, which is January term. So it starts right at the time that finals ends in December and goes through the start of classes in January. It may not work here necessarily. Contracts are structured, but I know that that's a way in which they've accomplished that in East Coast cities. J term stands for January term.
aspect of it, if we can relate to their lives as human beings, like a foreign object as a student, students are not foreign objects.
They may not see their policies, right away.
Outline for us, and then try to go through
Every
prior years. Some of the work that we get that's gotten bogged down. So
Well, it's talking about understanding transferable skills. Is that like you might be setting yourself up for one career, and while this class technically is set up to help prepare you for that career pathway, how many of us have changed careers and gotten to the end of the degree program or changed our trajectory or changed our advanced
skill set more into any other industry. And showing that there's value in there's value in the other types of classes that you can take.
I would say they at least take off 4 years. So things like where people wanted to be doctors, it's not as far along as what they think it'll be if they wisely plan to start with. That's how I infuse community.
So I'm going to take a different approach because I think we do that. I think faculty for the most part do a very good job of engaging with their students. I'd like to see some staff, faculty, staff, and all the departments, because oftentimes what I find is the division chair students will come to me with information that does not match what they know. Class and program. I think if we can all be on the same page, we're sending the same information out to our students. That's a type of engagement. That's so that would be my recommendation. How can we open up the dialogue among the different divisions, departments, so that we're all supporting the students? Put it out there because they.
I think that's actually really
But how do we
because
do it? That's the question.
it's holistic, because it's not just between us and the students, it's between us and the people who help the students.
It's a culture shift. It's ownership. We all have to take ownership because enrollment is all our responsibility. Student success is all our responsibility, and it's viewed from both sides. We all have a vested interest in making sure that our students are completing programs or completing classes so that they can go ahead and be successful out in the community if they don't happen to be certificate or degree chasers. It's one that I enjoy from my former campus, the collaboration between faculty and student affairs. It was one that we took advantage of in any opportunity that came up. But it's a culture change, and the campus has to be open and available to it. I'm all for it.
I think the Pathways initiative is actually going to facilitate more of that collaboration and those touch points along the way of all units and people actually having to buy in and understanding that it's everyone's responsibility. I think the other thing is then no matter where it is you're meeting your students, we're focused a lot on the academic and that knowledge building and making sure they have those competencies, but we also know what kind of competencies they need to be successful in the workplace and as a person of the community at large and as a civilian. And I think that's where we need to also engage them in a lot of co-curricular activities because they have to learn how to work as a team, interdisciplinary team, and to respect the expertise of everybody else along the way.
So one thing that's really useful for me, I don't know if it is another faculty division chair, is being able to pick up the phone and say, look, I don't know this, tell me what I need to do, where are we, what's policy? Let me give you my perspective on this, where we are, what's going on with academics from an academic standpoint.
All right.
It's really good at that. I can go back and forth all the time. But I'd like to see more of that in that
I'll give you an example why that's important, because this is dealing with students and not frustrating students and irritating students.
Right.
And one of them is this: a couple times at the beginning of the semester, I had people being sent for admissions. And told, go talk to the doctor, do a hidden replacement test to either one, get you into a class, or two, let you really enroll. Now, official college policy, with exceptions, we don't. It's on the website. Nobody on my admission should be saying, go talk to these people about that. And if they were going to do that, they should have picked up the phone
and share and learn from
instead of sending the choose the phone chase right there. No.
And Dory did
That's
address
important.
that several times.
We're getting into the learning portion. What did you learn? What kinds of things did you find out about how you impact our Puma pathway in your daily work or on a daily basis? And as students, same thing, either how you impact the Puma pathway with other students or how our faculty and staff have impacted you in this Puma pathway. So, which table would like to start? Denise.
I think one of the things that we were talking about, because we could all identify to where we all have responsibilities in this Puma pathway at all of the touch points, truly. And I think that this initiative is going to help facilitate the college shifting culture, and actually employees, faculty and staff learn how to identify how we actually impact that throughout. And I think that's the most critical thing to come out of the whole pathway thing, is it brings us all together, collaborative, and that we just automatically think to say, oh, I really don't know that, but let me call this person, I know who knows that, so that we do give correct information, timely information to students, so that we reduce the frustration and the stress they have along the pathway.
Thank you.
Just to kind of summarize what I heard here, there's a lot of excitement I heard at my table. So if you're worried about being in boring meetings, sit next to these folks. Because there was a lot of why nots in a space that's why or why should we. So as far as like preparation and reaching out or how to connect or engage other folks, it was just really neat to hear the student perspective on how they can influence all these things. So like I said, if they're in your breakout sessions, sit next to them and listen, because they're very excited, which is cool.
Okay. Thank you, Rodney.
I don't think we strategically really thought about or intentionally thought about what we were doing. I know in our discussions, we kind of were like, oh, we're not really doing prepare, and recruitment's doing prepare, and then recruitment says, oh no, student life is really doing prepare, and this is how you're doing it. And so I think some of it is just kind of bringing it to, a more structure. The other part was Thrive, kind of that end of the piece. With our 30th anniversary, like we're all looking at, hey, how are we doing this for our alums? What are we doing to like reconnect and let alums know that there is another component to still being with Pvc's?
We're all over the place. This is not what the table said. This is how I infiltrated this. When Ryan, who runs our creative writing program, his faculty said, I think I belong in Prepare, because he helps the students, even after they're admitted, get their degree and their certificate program together, gives them the guidance they need so they can go back to advising. It's made some connections. We're looking at how we all fit into these, and we do, and there are some that are more dominant areas than others. However, I think this is more, we all belong in all of these at varying times and for varying degrees. I think this is a good model for students as long as we're all supporting it. I made that up, the table didn't say it, so it's way off base.
So with our group, we kind of just started at the beginning part, so we never actually finished the last three components. We just kind of started at the beginning to focus on prepare and engage. But I think I agree, it is kind of all our responsibilities in different ways and shapes and forms and little pieces of our life. So although we think prepare, and I'll speak from the advisement side of things, yes, it starts at the house of the advisement, it starts with recruitment and kind of going out there. But ultimately, any touch point, from a faculty member also, that means a lot to a student to kind of make that connection. I just had an email earlier that I sent to one of the faculty members because it was based on their program. It's kind of making this connection and kind of how do we engage with them from the very beginning. So I think we all play such a valuable role in this itself. And I think I hope to continue through guided pathways and things like that. It's going to be continued collaboration, so we are all part of this cycle in leadership.
Great. Thank you, Amelia.
Can I add something?
Yes, absolutely, Nellie, go ahead.
And I'm more focused on the commitment and the completion of the degree, because, in the nursing department, once we get them, we get them. Okay, so the question now is, how do we retain them in order for them to complete the degree? Because now that our program is also involved, not only the traditional AAS, but we also have the AAS and the BSN program. So it's not just completion of the AAS, but now also the university partners with us, are working together in order for us to be able to complete even 1 or 2 degrees at the same time. So after that, how do they thrive? How do they get the job? How do they pass the 8 bucks exam and things like that? So really and one thing that I was reading way back was the involvement of the director in terms of, in terms of the commitment and the completion is basically how we talk to the students, how we deal with them, especially, it doesn't have to be the problem students or those who are having academic difficulties, but also the one just a process of normal conversation or casual conversation with students.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm gearing to that path.
Thank you, Nellie.
Well, we kind of focused on prepare,
in particular with developmental students that get placed in developmental, because, you know, if we lose them while they're in developmental studies just because of frustration and, you know, why am I taking the same classes that I had in high school, blah, 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 then the other four, you know, they don't even come into play. So we were talking about ways that we can try to encourage our developmental students that it's okay to be a developmental student, but at the same time try to enhance it to where they're able to get to that college level in a reasonable amount of time, and have study skills programs that are associated with their developmental classes, because a lot of the students just don't know how to study, and that's why they're in developmental studies. And so it's just a matter of focusing on that group, which is if you look at the percent of our students that start here and wind up either getting an associate's degree or getting to a point where they can transfer to the university, I think the smallest probability of getting from start to finish would be the students that have to start in developmental. So it's a group that we really can focus on a lot.
And the only thing I want to add is for us really to reflect and say, as an individual, are we ourselves on a Puma pathway? As an individual, do we prepare and maintain our own skill sets as an employee? Do we engage in the community college? Are we committed to an initiative or an idea? Do we complete? Do we follow through? And then do we thrive at work as well? Because if we don't model this for our students, there's no way they're going to be successful.
Beautiful, well said. Well said. Think about some of these things, right? So it is truly work from the inside out. As I was talking about, even when just giving the example of advisement and them being educators and critically thinking themselves and then fostering that in the students, right? It's a very similar concept to what it is that you're talking about. And to be able to also reflect on some of the other things where you feel like, oh, we got kind of stuck in this prepare stage, or we got stuck over here in the commit and thrive stage. Even in those things, I can give you examples. So now when you talk about nursing students, you say once we get them, we get them. You still have to prepare them for the work environment and expectations, right? They still have to have some level of commitment to get through those classes. So, and when you're talking about engaging, they have to engage with each other to learn the content and move through and create a sense of community, right? So those things are still happening even in those experiences along the way. Developmental education students, even if you have them overall as an overarching view in that prepare stage, right, they still have to be able to commit to wanting to be in college. How do we engage our developmental students in being able to do that? How do we engage them in them being able to see what their future looks like beyond developmental education? Those are things we can still do with them at that stage of them being a developmental education student and still move through that Puma pathway. So you can see how malleable this concept of the Puma pathway is in terms of how you look at it both internally, how you look at it in terms of how you foster that type of experience in our students, and then also in your particular roles that you have on campus, how you can have an impact even if that's not your particular role, right? So like I said, the example that I gave before where a student just happened to be on campus, someone that had not necessarily an expectation or responsibility to orient that student, took that student under their wing. So those kinds of things are the things that we all have a responsibility in, and it's so great to hear you all talking about being able to see that in this Puma pathway and seeing yourself in that Puma pathway. I really appreciate you all being able to share today. I'm sorry we did not get to our breakout groups, but I want you to take this energy that we're talking about right now. The next time we have our CLC meeting, we will be in our groups and we'll be starting to focus on those stakeholder groups as well. So I want you to keep these concepts in mind. I do need my cards back. I try to do this activity when I can. With that, thank you. We'll try to get you out of here on time. Appreciate you coming and spending the morning with us.